Oh. Photo out.
We should put you in the middle.
No. Great. Thanks so much. Great talks. Well, good. Well, the question that first question that rose from the audience is what's next, and so that's what I'm going to try to address here today. I think, as you know, we had you here today, and we're so pleased with the turnout and the engagement to help us develop and conceive a strategy, an implementation plan by which we can most effectively advance our understanding of our students and our public and our two states about climate change in a way that helps us all as a society deal with the challenges that are before us today and indeed throughout the future. So as we're training youngsters today who are not going to be voting citizens for another 20 years or so, it's important to recognize that this challenge in understanding climate change, but also, as Jim Connaughton pointed out, the broader challenge, and that includes that challenge of sustainability. We want to have a more literate and citizenry to help us make those decisions, prudent decisions into the future. This is not a debate, a challenge, or an issue which is going to be solved over the next year or 10 years. This is going to be with us for a very long period of time, and so that's the way we need to think about it. So the breakout sessions this morning, fueled hopefully by the inspiration of Dr. Holdren's talk this morning, and the output from that is very important for us in going forward and developing this implementation plan. The discussion of these distinguished people who gave us some of their ideas about the nature of the challenge and what we can do to address it, also a very important input. Another important thing, which is in your folders that we're asking, if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, you draw your attention to it. And Jim Connaughton is a perfect example of actually doing what we had hoped that people would do, is to look at this list, obviously informed because we've been working at this for a while and we kind of have an understanding of what the issues are. But we want your input and looking at these 6 points that we've identified here that would be guidance points. And as I went from one workout room to another, I kind of smiled because I heard some of these things come out as key issues. But I also learned that maybe it wasn't exactly worded the best way for the most effectiveness here. So if you look at this form and if you have any suggestions or thoughts of even changing the orientation of some of these statements or sending us writing on the back or sending us an email with some additional suggestions about guiding ideas that we need to have in this as we go forward with the implementation plan. This would be very helpful. And then finally, we had the work that you did in a very short period of time in the breakout groups this morning. And we have a crackerjack group of people who have tried to assemble those ideas, the key, major ideas that came from those discussions, integrating them across concurrent sessions that were going on the same topic of the 5 topics, and have given us some guidance here as we go forward with these 4 topics. I'm sorry, and I just want to give you a brief report out about what those are. We'll probably take this list and we'll put it up very shortly. John Holdren's metric was within 24 hours. Maybe we can do that so that you can go to the website and look at them and study them in more detail. Give us some suggestions. Mind you that this is a quick cut of what we heard and that we will be taking the input and all the tear sheets from the various rooms and using those as we move forward. And I'll kind of summarize those in a bit. But what are we going to use this for? Well, we're now just about a little over a year into our planning phase. We've had groups working on the K-12 issues, the informal education issues, and the higher education issues, and that have developed a number of rich products. Keep in mind that this Made Clear effort is not only about climate change education per se, but we have an obligation and an interest actually in learning from this. So research on what works and what doesn't work is Randy's here nodding his head, a very important part of this. And so we're going to be researching this issue understanding the systems we're working in, understanding what could be effective as we go forward throughout this process as well. Our goal is to develop over the next few months an implementation plan which will represent the research that we did, the understanding that we've developed, the input we've gotten from this group, but also the need to focus. One of the attractions to our approach is that it's systemic. It takes education at all levels in 2 states and tries to look at how we can address them. Many other groups that are working on this problem of climate change education are maybe focusing on one specific type of impact of climate change. We're trying to look at the full breadth, and we're trying to bring it home to where people live in our 2 states. So that's a challenge that we have. It's not clear, so we need to make it clear that we can do all of these things well in an implementation plan. So there will have to be some choices and some prioritization of things that we want to focus on. So you can help us, your input helps us understand that and make those decisions. So we will develop this implementation plan. It involves intimate interaction not only with our 2 university systems, but also with the K-12 instructional programs in our 2 states, a network of informal education entities that we're all engaged in this. And hopefully, we will be able to implement this no matter what happens, but as I said earlier, we'll be looking for support to help us bring this program and make it happen based on the implementation plan that we developed. So we had 4 breakout themes. The first was preparing the educators to teach climate change, and they looked at the P20, PK20, preschool, kindergarten to 20th year of education, and informal educators, which means graduate school or professional school. And informal educators should have broad and deep understanding of climate change to meet the meet climate change literacy goals. And each of these groups had a series of guiding questions, which I won't burden you with here. But their top responses of this group of dealing with preparing the educators to teach climate change are A, the solutions require a paradigm shift to a more interdisciplinary approach to teaching and learning that incorporates real-life problems as tools for engaging students at all levels in the P20 continuum. We heard that from Dr. Holdren's talk in the morning. We heard that from several of the speakers here, Mr. Connaughton and President Harker in particular, that this is not an issue which can be siloed into the various disciplines. It's not simply a scientific problem. It's a problem that affects us in our enterprises, in our society, in our lives, and needs to be approached that way. B was better understanding of the evidence around the science and the evidence about teaching of the science. Teachers need to know which teaching resources and other supports are best for helping students understand climate disruption patterns. As Shirley Malcolm pointed out, the AAAS is in developing its materials is taking great pains to try to make sure that it's accurate, and because of the contentious environment we sometimes find ourselves in within our American society today about the subject of climate change. And I think we need to think about that as we go forward as well. I happen to serve on a number of National Academy committees that have dealt with climate change, and we go through the same process of careful, tortuous examination of the way the things are worded. So if you look at the America's Climate Choices report, it uses a term that this is a pressing problem, and we debated for a month the use of the term pressing as opposed to urgent, and to try to communicate what we have. So we need to pay careful attention to that. On that basis, you heard from Dr. Holdren today, I think very convincing evidence that the climate is changing over the last 100 years, that humans are predominantly responsible for it, and that we expect to see climate change continue into the future. Even if we take urgent action, we will still have to deal with changing climate. Those 3 points, climate's changing, responsibility of humans, and the continuation of climate change, were the subject of a recent poll that was conducted just by Stanford University and some collaborators released just last week. And interestingly, it showed that 83% of the American public believe that the climate is changing. So that's good news. We're part of the way there. And that 72% believe that, that humans are at least partially responsible, either equally responsible with natural forces or primarily responsible. This was broken down in this poll by party, political registration. And I won't go into all the fine points, but it's important to understand that 54% of Republicans, which are assumed to be, there's this polarization, believe that humans are at least partially responsible for the observed change. And so we really have not an impossible burden of taking a large country of people who don't recognize that there's a problem, but we really have a challenge of taking all of our people and helping them understand why it's a problem. And as so many people have pointed out, what are the solutions, the sort of the action-oriented, hopeful messages that we go forward. So climate change education in our program can't be just about the science of climate change and why the climate is changing and what the consequences are. That's an important part of it, but it also has to be understanding the solutions and what it means to our society and our economy as we go forward.